The 24 hours ended, and both species gathered in the main assembly hall for the final demonstration. The neutral judging panel consisted of 3 representatives from species that had no alliance with either Earth or the Volanthe Empire. They sat at an elevated platform, their various forms of eyes watching the proceedings with careful attention. Ambassador Claire Bennett stood with the human delegation on one side of the hall. Across from them, the Volanthe Council members waited with expressions of supreme confidence. Emperor Krizith himself had joined via holographic projection, his massive form flickering slightly as he observed his daughter's challenge. "This is foolishness." The Emperor's voice boomed through the hall. "My daughter will demonstrate Volanthe superiority, and Earth will accept its proper place beneath our protection." Claire said nothing. She had done everything she could. Now it was up to Danny Cole and the slim hope that Princess Zyrith had seen something in the past 24 hours that would change her. Kevin Morris was called first. He walked to the demonstration area with visible nervousness. The bruises on his arms from Zyrith's training methods were visible, and he moved with the stiffness of someone whose body had been pushed far beyond its limits. "Demonstrate the forms you have learned," the lead judge instructed. Kevin began. His movements were technically correct, each position matching the traditional Volanthe combat style. He had memorized every angle, every stance, every transition. But there was no spirit in his performance. His eyes were empty. His body moved from fear of punishment rather than understanding of purpose. The Volanthe judges watched with approval. This was proper training. Break the student, rebuild them, create a weapon. Kevin had been broken successfully, but the neutral judges saw something different. They saw a human who had been bullied into compliance, who performed out of terror rather than skill. When Kevin finished, they made notes on their evaluation devices without revealing their conclusions. Then it was Princess Zyrith's turn. She walked to the demonstration area carrying Danny's guitar. The Volanthe delegation fell silent with shock. Their princess, heir to an empire of conquest, held a primitive human instrument as if it were a treasure. Emperor Krizeth's hologram flickered with anger. "Zyrith, what is the meaning of this? Put down that ridiculous object and refuse this farce." Zyrith looked at her father's image. For the first time in her life, she did not immediately obey. "The terms of the challenge specified that I would demonstrate what I learned. This is what I learned." She sat on a simple chair in the center of the hall. The guitar looked small in her clawed hands, almost fragile. The Volanthe Council members shifted with embarrassment. Their princess was about to humiliate herself and their entire empire before the galaxy. Danny caught Zyrith's eye from the crowd. He nodded once, the same simple gesture of encouragement he had given her countless times during their training. Zyrith began to play. The melody was simple, the same basic song Danny had taught her. Her clawed fingers found the strings with uncertain precision. She missed notes. She fumbled transitions. By any technical standard, her performance was deeply flawed, but something else was happening. Something the Volanthe had never seen before. Princess Zyrith was creating. Not conquering, not dominating, not proving superiority. She was making something beautiful out of nothing, offering it to the universe without expectation of reward or recognition. And more than that, she was vulnerable. She was allowing others to see her imperfection, her struggle, her humanity. The word did not translate into the Volanthe language because the concept did not exist in their culture. But here, in this moment, Princess Zyrith demonstrated something her people had lost thousands of years ago. She demonstrated the courage to be imperfect. When the melody ended, silence filled the hall. Zyrith looked up at the crowd with an expression no one had ever seen on her face before. She was not proud or triumphant. She was uncertain and hopeful, like someone who had just discovered a new part of themselves. Ambassador Bennett began to clap. The sound echoed through the silent hall. One by one, the human delegation joined her. Then, slowly, some of the neutral observers added their applause. Even a few of the younger Volanti Council members found themselves moving their hands together, though they did not understand why. The lead judge stood. "We have reached our decision." The purpose of this challenge was to evaluate teaching ability. Kevin Morris demonstrated technical competence in Volanti combat forms. However, his performance showed fear rather than understanding. He was trained through dominance, not taught through connection. The judge turned to Xyrith. Princess Xyrith demonstrated a skill entirely foreign to her species and culture. More importantly, she demonstrated growth. She began this challenge as a conqueror and ended it as a student. Her teacher showed her something no Volanti has experienced in 10,000 years: the power of patience, encouragement, and genuine care for another's development. Emperor Krazeth's hologram crackled with fury. "This is unacceptable. My daughter was supposed to prove Volanti superiority, not adopt the weaknesses of these inferior creatures." "Perhaps," the judge continued calmly, "what you call weakness is actually strength of a different kind. The panel rules in favor of humanity. The Equal Partnership Treaty will be implemented as agreed." The human delegation erupted in celebration. Claire Bennett felt tears of relief forming in her eyes. Against all odds, they had won. Not through strength or cunning, but through showing an alien princess that there were other ways to live. Xyrith stood and walked toward Danny, ignoring the chaos around her. The Volanti guards moved to stop her, but she waved them away with a gesture that brooked no argument. "You changed something in me," she said when she reached him. "I do not fully understand what, but I know I am not the same person who arrived on this station." "That is what learning does," Danny replied. "It changes us. My father will be furious. The Empire will see this as a humiliation. There may be consequences I cannot predict. Will you be all right?" Xyrith considered the question. In her old life, she would have dismissed it as a relevant concern for personal well-being. Now, she understood it as something else. It was care. It was connection. It was the human way of saying that her life mattered beyond her usefulness to the Empire. "I do not know," she admitted. "But I know I cannot go back to being who I was. You showed me that there is more to existence than conquest and domination. I need to understand what that means." She turned to Ambassador Bennett. "I request permission to remain on Earth as a cultural ambassador. There is much I need to learn, and I believe I can help build the bridge between our peoples." The request shocked everyone, including the Volanti delegation. A princess of the Empire staying among humans? It was unprecedented. "That would require approval from your government," Claire said carefully. "I am making a formal request," Xyrith replied. "Under Volanti law, a royal may choose their own path once they have completed a formal challenge. I have completed the challenge, regardless of its outcome. The choice is mine." Emperor Krazeth's hologram flickered one final time. "You are no longer my daughter," he declared, then vanished. The word should have devastated Xyrith. Instead, she felt something unexpected: freedom. For the first time in her life, she was not defined by her empire, her bloodline, or her duty to conquer. She was simply herself, with all the uncertainty and possibility that entailed. Danny fell into step beside her as she walked away from the assembly hall. "So, what now?" Xyrith looked at him with those golden eyes that had once seemed so cold and distant. Now, they held warmth and curiosity that would have been impossible a day ago. "Now you teach me another song," she said. "And perhaps, in time, I will teach your people something as well. Not combat or conquest, but something of value. I am not sure what yet. We have time to figure it out," Danny said. That is another human thing. We do not always need to have all the answers immediately. For the first time in her life, Princess Zyrith of the Volanthi Empire laughed. It was an uncertain sound, unpracticed and slightly awkward. But it was genuine, and it was hers. Outside the station windows, the stars continued their eternal dance. Somewhere out there, the Volanthi Empire would continue its conquests. But here, in this moment, something new had begun. A bridge between species, built not on strength or fear, but on the simple human act of teaching someone to create something beautiful. It was a small beginning. But all great changes start somewhere. And sometimes, the most powerful challenge is not the one you win, but the one that changes you. 12 hours into the challenge, Kevin Morris was struggling to stand. His body ached from the constant physical training, and his mind was exhausted from trying to remember the complex combat forms. Princess Zyrith had shown no mercy, pushing him harder with each passing hour. "Your form is still wrong," Zyrith said, circling him like a predator examining wounded prey. "Your stance is too narrow. Your arms are positioned incorrectly. You have made the same mistake 17 times. "I am trying," Kevin said through gritted teeth. "Maybe if you showed me again more slowly this time." Repetition of demonstration indicates failure on the student's part, not the teacher's. A proper student observes once and replicates perfectly. She grabbed his arm and twisted it into the correct position, ignoring his grunt of pain. Pain is instruction. Your body will remember what your mind cannot. Kevin tried the form again. He was marginally better, but Zyrith found new flaws to criticize. Nothing he did was good enough. Nothing ever would be good enough in her eyes. In the other training room, the atmosphere was completely different. Zyrith had been practicing for hours, and Danny had remained patient through every failed attempt. Her clawed fingers had begun to find the strings more naturally, though the sounds she produced were still rough and uncertain. "Tell me something," Zyrith said during a brief rest period. "Why did you volunteer for this challenge? You must have known you could not defeat a Volanthi in any fair competition." Danny thought about the question before answering. "Ambassador Bennett asked me because she believed I could show you something valuable. Not defeat you, but teach you something your people have never learned." "And what is that?" "That there are other ways to be strong." Zyrith made a dismissive sound. "Strength is strength. There is only one kind. The ability to dominate others, to impose your will, to conquer and control. Is that truly what you believe? Or is that what you were taught to believe?" The question struck something deep in Zyrith's mind. She had never considered the difference between her own beliefs and the teachings of her culture. In Volanthi society, there was no distinction. You believed what you were taught, or you were corrected until you did. "There is no difference," she said, but her voice lacked its usual certainty. Danny picked up the guitar again. "Let me tell you a story. When I was young, I was not strong. I was small for my age, and other children would pick on me. My mother saw me crying one day after a particularly bad incident, and she sat me down with this guitar." "She gave you a weapon?" "No. She gave me a way to express what I was feeling. She taught me that the pain I felt was not weakness. It was part of being alive, part of being human. And instead of hiding from it or letting it destroy me, I could transform it into something beautiful." Zyrith listened with increasing confusion. "You are saying that your weakness became your strength?" "I am saying that what I thought was weakness turned out to be something else entirely. The ability to feel deeply, to connect with others, to create meaning from suffering. These are not weaknesses. They are capabilities that your species has never developed, because we eliminated them. They interfered with our purpose." "And what is your purpose, Princess? To conquer everything? To dominate every species you encounter? What happens when there is nothing left to conquer?" The question had no answer. In 10,000 years of Volanthi history, no one had ever considered what came after total victory. Conquest was not a means to an end. It was the end itself. Zareth stood abruptly and walked to the window. The stars stretched out before her, countless points of light representing worlds her empire had conquered or would conquer. It had always seemed glorious to her. Now, for the first time, it seemed empty. "You confuse me," she admitted without turning around. "Everything you say contradicts everything I know. Yet I cannot find the flaw in your reasoning." "Perhaps there is no flaw. Perhaps what you know is simply incomplete." She turned to face him. "In my culture, admitting incompleteness is admitting weakness. In my culture, admitting you do not know everything is the first step toward learning. It takes courage to accept that you might be wrong." Danny held out the guitar to her. "Try again. Not because you want to prove something, but because you want to understand what this instrument can do." Zareth took the guitar and sat down. This time, she did not attack the strings with the ferocity of combat training. She tried to feel them, to understand how pressure and position created different sounds. It was slower, softer, more uncertain than anything she had ever done. And yet, something began to emerge. 3 notes, then 4, then 5. A simple melody that Danny had shown her earlier in the day. It was imperfect, with missed notes and awkward transitions. But it was music. "That was beautiful," Danny said. Zareth looked at him sharply, expecting mockery. She found only sincerity. No one had ever called anything she did beautiful before. Her achievements were described as impressive, powerful, dominating. Never beautiful. It was full of mistakes, she said. Mistakes are part of learning. They do not diminish what you created. If anything, they make it more meaningful. You are doing something difficult, something new, something outside your experience. That takes courage. During the next break, Zareth slipped away to observe Kevin's training session. She watched through a small window as her student struggled through another combat form. His movements had improved, but his face showed only fear. He performed the forms because he was afraid of her punishment, not because he understood their purpose. She then observed Danny interacting with other humans on the station. She watched him help a lost child find her parents, kneeling down to speak with the frightened girl at her own level. She watched him share food with colleagues, laughing at jokes she could not understand. She watched him sit in comfortable silence with an elderly man, neither of them speaking, but both seeming content. These humans did so many things that served no practical purpose. They helped those who could offer nothing in return. They created art that provided no tactical advantage. They formed connections that made them vulnerable to loss and pain, and yet they seemed happier than any Volanthi she had ever known. The Volanthi were efficient. The Volanthi were powerful. The Volanthi were victorious in every conflict. But Zareth could not remember the last time she had seen one of her people laugh with genuine joy or sit in peaceful contentment with another being. She returned to Danny's training room with new questions forming in her mind. Questions she was not sure she wanted answered, because the answers might change everything she believed about herself and her people. "You seem troubled," Danny observed when she sat down again. "I am questioning things I never questioned before. It is uncomfortable. Growth usually is." He handed her the guitar. "Ready to continue?" Zareth positioned her fingers on the strings. This time, she did not think about winning or losing. She did not think about proving Volanthi superiority. She simply tried to create something beautiful, even if it was imperfect, even if it was vulnerable, even if it made no practical sense. The melody that emerged was simple and hesitant. But for the first time in her life, Princess Zareth created something rather than conquered something, and she discovered that it felt different from victory. It felt like something she had no word for in her language. It felt like peace. Princess Zyrith stood in the training hall that had been prepared for the challenge. Her golden eyes examined the space with obvious contempt. It was too small, too soft, too human. The floors were padded. The walls were decorated with meaningless art. There was even a small fountain in one corner, as if water falling on rocks served any practical purpose. The terms of the contest had been explained to her, and she had accepted them without hesitation. Teaching was simply another form of dominance. She would demonstrate her superiority over the human student, while the foolish security officer would fail to teach her anything meaningful. The outcome was never in doubt. Her student arrived shortly after. Kevin Morris was 26 years old, a volunteer who had stepped forward when the call went out. He was average height, average build, with nothing remarkable about his appearance. Zyrith found him disappointing. "You will learn the basic forms of Volante combat," she announced without greeting. "These movements have been refined over 10,000 years of conquest. They are perfect expressions of power and control. You have 24 hours to demonstrate competence." Kevin nodded nervously. "I will do my best, Princess." "Your best is irrelevant. Only results matter." She moved to the center of the training space. "Watch carefully. I will demonstrate each form once. You will then repeat it exactly. Any deviation will be corrected." She flowed through the first form with deadly grace. Her body twisted and struck with precision that seemed almost supernatural. Kevin watched with wide eyes, trying to memorize every movement. "Now you," Zyrith commanded. Kevin attempted the form. His movements were awkward and slow compared to hers. He lost his balance halfway through and had to catch himself on the padded wall. "Pathetic," Cyrus said. Again. He tried again. This time, he made it further before stumbling. Zyrith moved behind him and physically adjusted his posture, her clawed hands gripping his arms with enough force to leave bruises. "Your species is weak," she observed. "Your joints bend in wrong directions. Your muscles lack proper density. It is a wonder you survived on your own world long enough to develop space travel." "We found other ways to survive," Kevin said quietly. "Excuses. The strong do not need other ways. They simply dominate." She pushed him back to the starting position. "Again, and this time, do not embarrass yourself." The training continued like this for hours. Kevin improved slowly, but every mistake was met with harsh criticism and sometimes physical correction. Zyrith showed no patience, no encouragement, no recognition of progress. In her world, failure deserved punishment, and success was simply the minimum expectation. Meanwhile, in another section of the station, Danny Cole prepared for his own teaching session. He had chosen to teach Princess Zyrith how to play guitar. It was a simple instrument, something a beginner could learn basic melodies on within hours. More importantly, it required something the Volante had never developed: the ability to create beauty without purpose. Zyrith arrived at the designated room with obvious reluctance. She looked at the acoustic guitar waiting on a stand and made a sound of disgust. "This is what you will teach me? A primitive noise-making device?" "It is called a guitar," Danny said calmly. "It is used to create music. Music." She spoke the word like it was a disease. "The sounds I heard in your common areas. Pointless vibrations in the air. What purpose does it serve? Does it intimidate enemies? Does it coordinate troop movements?" "It makes people feel things," Danny replied. "Happiness, sadness, connection to others. It is a way of sharing emotions." Zyrith stared at him as if he had started speaking nonsense. "Emotions are weaknesses. The Volante trained from birth to suppress emotional responses. They interfere with combat efficiency and rational decision-making." Danny picked up the guitar and sat down on a simple chair. He gestured to another chair across from him. "Please, sit." Let me show you something. She remained standing, arms crossed. I did not come here to be shown things. I came here to demonstrate that your teaching methods are inferior to Volante training. Then sit and let me fail, Danny said with a slight smile. What do you have to lose? The logic was sound, even if Xyrith did not want to admit it. She sat in the chair, her posture rigid and defensive. Danny began to play. It was a simple melody, something his mother had taught him many years ago. The notes filled the small room with warmth, creating an atmosphere that felt somehow different from anything else on the station. Xyrith watched his fingers move across the strings. Despite herself, she found the sounds not entirely unpleasant. There was a pattern to them, a structure that her analytical mind could appreciate, even if she did not understand the purpose. "Why do you play this?" she asked when he finished. "My mother taught me this song when I was young," Danny answered. "She passed away several years ago. When I play it, I remember her. I feel connected to her, even though she is gone." Xyrith processed this information with confusion. You voluntarily trigger memories of loss. That seems counterproductive to mental efficiency. Perhaps. But it also brings me comfort. The pain and the comfort exist together. That is part of being human. You speak of your dead mother to an adversary. In Volante culture, such information would be used against you. Your enemies would invoke her memory to destabilize you in combat. Danny shrugged. You are not my enemy. You are my student. There is no reason to hide things from you. The statement caught Xyrith off guard. She was so accustomed to every interaction being a form of competition that the idea of simply sharing information without strategic purpose seemed almost dangerous. "Very well," she said finally. "Teach me your primitive instrument. I will learn it and demonstrate that Volante can master any skill, even pointless ones." Danny handed her the guitar. Her clawed fingers were not designed for delicate work, and she struggled to hold it properly. He gently adjusted her grip, moving her hands into the correct position. "We will start with something simple. 3 notes that form the beginning of a melody. Like this." He demonstrated, then waited for her to try. Xyrith pressed her clawed fingers against the strings and produced a horrible scratching sound. She immediately looked at Danny, expecting criticism or mockery. Instead, he nodded encouragingly. "Good first attempt. Your finger placement was almost correct. Try moving this one slightly to the left." She adjusted and tried again. The sound was slightly better, though still far from musical. "Better," Danny said. "You are making progress." I produced an unpleasant noise. That is not progress. It is the beginning of progress. No one plays perfectly the first time. The goal is improvement, not immediate perfection. Xyrith found this approach deeply uncomfortable. In Volante training, anything less than perfection was failure. There was no concept of gradual improvement or learning from mistakes. You either succeeded or you were punished until you succeeded. But Danny showed no disappointment in her failure. He simply helped her adjust and try again, offering gentle corrections and patient explanations. There was no competition in his manner, no attempt to establish dominance. He genuinely seemed to want her to succeed. It was the strangest experience of her life. As the hours passed, Xyrith began to understand why this challenge had been chosen. The humans were not trying to defeat her at something she was good at. They were showing her something she had never encountered before: kindness without expectation, patience without limit, teaching without domination. She did not understand it. But for the first time in her life, Princess Xyrith of the Volante Empire found herself wanting to understand. And that, more than any physical or mental challenge, was the most dangerous thing the humans could have done to her. The emergency council session began within hours of Princess Xyrith's challenge. Representatives from every major nation and colony joined through secure communication channels. Military commanders argued with scientists. Politicians shouted over diplomats. Everyone had an opinion about what should be done. General Marcus Hayes wanted to select their finest Special Forces operative. He presented files on soldiers who had survived impossible missions, men and women who had pushed the human body to its absolute limits. If this is going to be a physical contest, we need someone who can match Volante's strength with human determination, he insisted. Dr. Laura Simmons shook her head. She was a xenanthropologist who had spent 15 years studying alien cultures, including the Volante. You are thinking like a human, General. The Volante have never lost a physical challenge. Their bodies are designed for combat. Even our strongest soldier would be torn apart in seconds. Then we choose a mental challenge, suggested Dr. Raymond Park, a leading scientist from the Korean Space Institute. Mathematics, logic puzzles, strategic games. Surely we can outthink them. Laura sighed. The Volante conquered the Mindari, a species whose entire civilization was built on intellectual achievement. They solved their greatest puzzles in days and then conquered their homeworld. We cannot assume intellectual superiority either. The arguments continued for hours. Ambassador Claire Bennett listened carefully, but said little. She was thinking about what Danny Cole had said about Princess Zyrith. There had been something in the way Zyrith looked at Earth, a moment of genuine wonder before she covered it with arrogance. Finally, Claire called Danny to testify before the council. He stood before the assembled leaders looking somewhat uncomfortable with the attention. Officer Cole, you were present during the princess's arrival. The ambassador tells us you observed something the rest of us missed. Please explain. Danny collected his thoughts before speaking. When Princess Zyrith first looked at Earth through the observation window, she asked about our moon and our tides. The question seemed scientific, curious. She was genuinely interested in how our planet worked. So she is intelligent, General Hayes said dismissively. That is hardly news. There was more, Danny continued. Before the formal greeting, while we were waiting, I overheard her speaking with one of her guards. She asked about the music playing in the station's common areas. She wanted to know what purpose it served. When the guard could not answer, she seemed almost disappointed. Dr. Simmons leaned forward with interest. Music? The Volante have no music as we understand it. Their closest cultural equivalent is rhythmic war chanting used to intimidate enemies before battle. Exactly, Danny said. She was curious about something that does not exist in her world. And when she caught herself being curious, she immediately became more aggressive and insulting, as if she was ashamed of her own interest. Claire stood up. I believe Officer Cole has identified something important. Princess Zyrith was raised in a culture that values only strength and conquest. But somewhere inside her, there is curiosity about other ways of living. That is our advantage. Curiosity will not save us from Volante domination, General Hayes argued. Perhaps not directly, Claire agreed. But consider this. The Volante expect us to challenge them at something we think we can win. They expect us to play by their rules, to compete in a way they understand. What if we do not? The council fell silent, waiting for her to explain. Dr. Simmons, you said the Volante conquered the Mindari despite their intellectual achievements. But what about artistic cultures? Peaceful civilizations that never fought back? Laura thought for a moment. The Volante typically absorb peaceful species without formal conquest. They consider them beneath notice. There is one interesting case, however. The Kaleshi were a species dedicated entirely to creative expression. When the Volante arrived, the Kaleshi simply continued making art. They offered no resistance and no submission. The Volante did not know what to do with them. Eventually, they left the Kaleshi alone, declaring them too insignificant to bother conquering. because they could not defeat them in any meaningful way, Claire said. You cannot conquer someone who does not play your game. General Hayes was growing frustrated. So your plan is to confuse the princess until she leaves? That hardly seems practical. No, my plan is different. Claire turned to Danny. Officer Cole, the princess issued her challenge to you specifically. You are the one who did not react to her provocations. I believe you should be our champion. The council erupted in protest. Danny Cole was a security officer, not a warrior or a genius. He had no exceptional skills that would help him defeat a Volante princess in any traditional contest. What possible contest could Officer Cole win against Princess Cyrith? General Hayes demanded. Claire smiled. Teaching. The room went quiet again. Both Princess Cyrith and Officer Cole will attempt to teach a skill to a member of the opposing species. The student's performance will be judged after 24 hours. This is not about winning or losing in the way the Volante understand it. This is about demonstrating a capability they have never developed. Dr. Simmons nodded slowly. The Volante have no concept of cooperative education. Their training methods are based entirely on dominance and punishment. They break students down and rebuild them. They have never taught through patience and encouragement. And Officer Cole, Claire said, looking at Danny, demonstrated exactly those qualities when facing the princess. He responded to aggression with patience. He offered concern instead of competition. If anyone can show the Volante what humanity truly offers the galaxy, it is someone like him. Danny looked uncertain. Ambassador, I am not sure I understand what you are asking me to do. I am asking you to be yourself, Claire replied. When Princess Cyrith attempts to teach her student, she will use the only method she knows: fear and intimidation, dominance and punishment. You will teach your student the human way, with patience, with kindness, with genuine care for their success. And if she still wins? If her methods prove more effective than mine? Claire shook her head. This is not about effectiveness. This is about showing the Volante something they have never seen before, something they cannot quantify or understand, something that might make Princess Cyrith question everything she has been taught about inferior species. The council debated for another hour, but eventually they agreed. It was a strange plan, perhaps even a foolish one, but traditional approaches would certainly fail. At least this approach had the advantage of being completely unexpected. Danny accepted the role of humanity's champion with quiet determination. He did not feel like a hero or a savior. He felt like a security officer who had been given an impossible task. But he had seen something in Princess Cyrith's eyes during that first meeting. Behind the arrogance and the cruelty, there was someone who had never been allowed to be curious, never been allowed to be vulnerable, never been allowed to simply wonder at the universe without having to conquer it. Maybe that was enough. Maybe showing her a different way of being was more powerful than any physical or mental challenge could ever be. Or maybe he was completely wrong, and Earth would fall under Volante control because a security officer thought he saw kindness in an alien princess's eyes. Only time would tell. The challenge was set. In 3 days, Princess Cyrith would learn what humanity truly had to offer. And Danny Cole would discover if patience and compassion could really stand against centuries of conquest and domination. He hoped. Claire Bennett knew what she was doing. Because if she was wrong, the consequences would be felt by every human in the galaxy. The massive starship emerged from the darkness of space like a predator entering unfamiliar waters. Its hull was covered in sharp angles and aggressive lines that spoke of a civilization built on conquest. The Volante diplomatic vessel made no attempt to look peaceful or friendly. That was not their way. Inside the Horizon Gateway orbital station, Ambassador Claire Bennett stood at the main observation deck with her diplomatic team. She had spent 3 months preparing for this moment. The Volanthi Empire controlled over 40 star systems, and their reputation for martial excellence was known across the galaxy. Every species they encountered eventually bent to their will, either through direct conquest or through treaties that favored the Volanthi. In every possible way, the airlock doors opened with a soft hiss. 6 Volanthi warriors entered first, their scaled bodies towering over the human security officers. Each warrior stood nearly 8 feet tall, with thick purple scales covering their muscular frames. Their eyes glowed with a faint golden light, and their clawed hands rested near the ceremonial blades at their hips. Then came Princess Zareth. She was smaller than her guards, but carried herself with absolute authority. Her scales were a deeper shade of purple, almost black, with streaks of silver running along her arms. A delicate crown made of some unknown metal rested on her head. Her golden eyes surveyed the human delegation with obvious disappointment. Claire stepped forward and bowed slightly. She had practiced this greeting many times. The bow was shallow enough to show respect without suggesting submission. At least, that was the theory. Princess Zareth, on behalf of Earth and the United Human Colonies, I welcome you to Horizon Gateway. We are honored by your presence. Zareth walked past her without acknowledgement. She moved to the observation window and looked down at the blue and green planet below. For a long moment, she said nothing. The human delegation exchanged nervous glances. "This is your homeworld," Zareth finally said. Her voice was melodic but carried a sharp edge. "It is smaller than I expected, and only 1 moon. How have your tides not destroyed your coastal regions?" "Our moon provides stable tides," Claire replied carefully. "We've learned to work with our environment rather than against it." Zareth turned to face her. A thin smile crossed her scaled lips. "Work with your environment. Yes, I suppose that is what weak species must do." The strong reshaped their environments to suit their needs. Claire felt the insult but kept her expression neutral. Beside her, she noticed Danny Cole, one of the security officers, standing at perfect attention. His face showed no reaction to the princess's words. He simply watched and waited, like a person who had seen difficult situations before and knew that patience was often the best response. "Perhaps you would like to see the rest of the station," Claire offered. "We have prepared quarters for your delegation and arranged a formal dinner for this evening." "Your hospitality is noted," Zareth said, though her tone made clear she found little value in it. "Tell me, Ambassador, what exactly does humanity offer the galaxy? We have studied your species. You are not particularly strong. Your senses are dull compared to most civilized races. You cannot survive in extreme temperatures. You require constant hydration and regular sleep. By all measures, you should have been conquered or extinct long ago." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Several of the human security officers shifted uncomfortably. Claire took a breath before responding. "We offer cooperation, Princess. Friendship. The sharing of knowledge and culture for mutual benefit." Zareth laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. Cooperation. The tool of the powerless. The Volanthi do not cooperate. We lead, and others follow. That is the natural order of things. She began walking along the observation deck, her guards following in perfect formation. She stopped in front of Danny Cole and studied him with those glowing eyes. Danny met her gaze without flinching, but he also showed no aggression. He simply stood there, calm and professional. "This one does not fear me," Zareth observed. "Is he stupid or simply unaware of what a Volanthi warrior can do to a human body?" "Officer Cole is one of our finest security personnel," Claire said quickly. "He has served with distinction for many years, and yet he shows no reaction to my presence. No fear, no anger, no desire to prove himself." Zareth leaned closer to Danny, her face inches from his. "What are you thinking, little human?" Danny spoke for the first time. His voice was steady and respectful. I am thinking that you have traveled a very long way, Princess, and that the journey must have been tiring. I am thinking that perhaps you would appreciate some rest before the evening's activities. Xyrath pulled back, her expression unreadable. She stared at Danny for several seconds before turning away. Something about his answer had surprised her, though she would never admit it. Your species confuses me, she announced to no one in particular. You face a superior being and offer concern for my comfort rather than attempting to establish your own worth. Either you are too foolish to understand your position, or you possess some form of deception that I have not yet identified. She walked to the center of the observation deck and raised her voice so all could hear. I grow tired of diplomatic games. Let us settle the matter of humanity's place in the galaxy right now. I, Princess Xyrath of the Volanthi Empire, daughter of Emperor Krezith the Magnificent, issue a formal challenge. The Volanthi guards suddenly stood straighter. Claire felt her heart rate increase. She had studied Volanthi culture extensively, and she knew that a formal challenge could not be ignored. I will face any human in a contest of your choosing, Xyrath continued. Any contest at all. Physical, mental, whatever you believe gives you the best chance. If I win, Earth will accept Volanthi protection status. You will become part of our empire, and your resources and population will serve our greater purpose. And if you lose? Claire asked, her voice tight. Xyrath smiled coldly. If I lose, we will sign an equal partnership treaty. Full diplomatic recognition. Trade agreements that favor neither side. You will be treated as equals rather than as the lesser species you clearly are. The Volanthi council members behind her exchanged worried looks. One of them, an older male with scarred scales, stepped forward. Princess, this is most irregular. Such challenges should be approved by the Emperor. The stakes you propose are significant. Silence, Xyrath commanded without looking at him. I am the Emperor's voice in this sector. My word is law. She turned back to Claire. You have 3 days to select your champion and name the contest. If you refuse, it will be considered surrender under Volanthi law, and the protection status will be implemented immediately. Claire wanted to refuse. Every diplomatic instinct told her this was a trap. But she had studied Volanthi law. Refusal truly was considered surrender. Earth would lose its independence without even having a chance to fight. We accept, she said, the words feeling heavy on her tongue. In 3 days, we will present our champion and name the contest. Xyrath nodded with satisfaction. I look forward to your futile attempt. Perhaps it will provide some entertainment before we absorb your little world into the Empire. She turned and walked toward the quarters prepared for her delegation, her guards following close behind. Only when she was gone did Claire allow herself to exhale. Danny Cole stepped up beside her. That went well, he said, quietly. Claire looked at him with disbelief. She just forced us into a competition that could determine the fate of our entire species. How exactly did that go well? Danny watched the corridor where Xyrath had disappeared. She asked about Earth's tides. She looked at our planet with curiosity before she remembered to act superior. There is something there, Ambassador. Something she does not want us to see. Claire considered his words. She hoped he was right, because right now, hope was all they had.